What's up, everybody? Welcome to the final episode of the Elder Scrolls Online podcast, a kind of funny Gamescast limited series. I'm one of your hosts, Greg Miller, alongside the master of hype, SnowBikeMike.
Hi, Greg. Not too happy that you're saying the final episode because I've been having so much fun.
It went too fast.
These.
It went too fast.
Went way too fast. Getting to spend time with these two guys has been pretty great, and talking all things Elder Scrolls Online has been pretty amazing.
Of course, these two guys are none other than Rich Lambert, of course, game director of the Elder Scrolls Online. Hello, how are you?
I am fantastic today.
Are you going to miss us?
Yes, actually.
Oh, you.
I'm looking forward to going home, but yeah, this was fun.
Maybe we can share, our characters. Maybe we get to play with each
Yeah,
other.
let's
That's
do
a
it.
great idea.
How many characters do you have, Rich?
Too many.
Are they on every platform as well, just everywhere?
I mean, technically, yes, but
Yeah.
I really only play on PC on the regular.
Sure. Okay. Fair enough. Okay. And then, of course, it's Matt Firor. Of course, he is the big cheese. All right. He is the big cheese studio director. ZeniMax Online Studios.
Yeah, and actually, after the last episode, Rich and I were talking a little bit about the Robert segment. We were talking about Robert Altman, and it's like it's really hard to get across kind of the culture that we have that results from that. But we were trying to figure out a way to say it so that people would understand that are listening to this. But I think it comes down to loyalty, right? It's like he was loyal to us. Right, it was not a traditional, CEO relationship where if he believed in what you were doing, like he would literally go to war for you, right?
Oh, yeah.
And we knew that, and he knew we would do that for him, right? And we were all pointed in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons I'm here is because of him. When I started here, Robert had just opened up a small satellite office in the Hunt Valley area to keep a small number of engineers and artists because they lived in Pennsylvania and they had to drive to Rockville every day, and that's like 2 hours each way, something like that. And they were like, we can't do this. And he's like, what would it take? What if I open something closer? And they were like, yeah. And he's like, okay, done. And he did.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's kind of
And then Rich was the manager of that office, right? And it's all because he wanted to make things work for the team, right?
Yeah.
And it's that it just, if he believed in something, it was going to happen, right?
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. It actually leads me to something, but I'll get to that in 1 second. Remember, everybody, this is the Elder Scrolls Online podcast, a 4-part series between the Elder Scrolls Online and us here at Kind of Funny. Of course, if you like the Elder Scrolls Online, play the game. Go get the other episodes that are up on their channels. If you like Kind of Funny, come get the episodes that are up on our channel under the Gamescast feed. You can get it as a podcast. You can get it as a YouTube video. You can have a great time. And no matter where you're getting it, please like, subscribe, and share, because we couldn't do this without you. Just like the Elder Scrolls Online wouldn't be anything without you, its community. But before we get to the community, which is what this episode's all about in the future and the cool stuff you're doing, I want to come back to this leadership question. We haven't talked at all about Xbox buying y'all. What's that been like? Because from the outside, I think they've done such a great job of keeping it like, no, you are ZeniMax Online Studios. Yeah. That's Bethesda. That's it's its own thing. It's a brand still.
Yeah, they bought ZeniMax for great games,
sure,
right, and a great game publisher. So it's in their best interest and our best interest to keep doing what we're doing, right? And so they facilitate that. I will say that happened in 2020, and it's like that was right as the pandemic happened, and then Robert passed away right then. Yeah. So a lot of change happened very quickly, and it was. The pandemic was tough, right? It was really hard. We haven't even gotten into what that did to ESO, and maybe where our numbers just exploded and our servers melted. But right, but that changeover happened then, and that was the least problematic by far of all the other things that were happening. Right, it was literally just smooth, seamless. To we got support from ZeniMax, and now it's Xbox, right? So they just let us do what we do.
I was going to say, I know, again, this is a new relationship. Obviously, we're about to talk about these COVID numbers and what it did for the game. But it is that thing of, when we've been talking about Robert Altman and him telling you, like, is this going to be a great video game? Is this going to be the best RPG of all time? Go do it. Does that seem to be the same case here? Like, obviously different. This is an established product that's been running for 10 years live. So, like, basically, are they staying out of the way of what you want to do?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like you tell us what you need. There are a few wrinkles, like it's more fiscal year based. It's a public company, right? So the meetings are a little different, but the goals are the same. And
Phil Spencer's always begging you for T-shirts to wear. I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, I love working with those guys because especially Phil, he's a gamer, right?
Yeah.
He understands exactly what we're trying to do in the sense of we're delivering an experience to a group of gamers, and we've proven that we can do it, right? And so as long as we keep doing that's what he's looking for.
Is there anything that interests you that Xbox and Microsoft have done? I think about cloud gaming, right? And having your game just so readily available at a click of a button. Has that impressed you guys? Is that something you take advantage of and think about for the future?
Yeah, well, we did have Stadia.
We did
have a Stadia client, so we were actually ahead of the curve on that.
Never forget.
Pour one out.
Yeah.
But again, now that we're working with giant companies, right, these things become possible, right? We, obviously the Google thing was more of a publishing deal, but with Xbox, we're on xCloud and we're on Game Pass, and right, we didn't have to do really anything to make those things happen, and it's great. Like that's the cool part of working with a giant company that's technology forward thinking.
They said the word loyalty, and it's really stuck with me, Greg. And
Okay.
I think it's really impressive, right? You talk about loyalty and what Robert meant to all of you and what he kind of brought to it all, and what you guys have done with your community and the community right back, that loyalty of, hey, this is 10 years plus, of course, with you guys on the back end, but it's wild. I think loyalty is a big one with MMOs, of loyalty from the developers for the fans of, hey, we expect you guys to deliver, and you guys have. And on the flip side, the loyalty of the fans of, hey, we're here through thick and thin. It could be bad. We're ready for the good stuff. But it is interesting when you think of 10 years and the word loyalty. It really stands out to me.
Yeah.
It's a relationship, right? It's
Absolutely.
like, they have lots of options, right? And a lot of the virtual world developer community relationship is trust and loyalty, right? And they trust that we'll do the right things, mostly the right things, right? Because we go back and change things constantly, right? But they trust that we're the people that are going to deliver the experience that they want.
When we're talking about this community, and this obviously is all about him today on this episode, we obviously talked about launch, the giant explosion, you're melting servers there, the learnings. Then we talked about console launch in previous episodes. Okay, there's this giant influx. You just touched on it. Is COVID and work from home and everybody being on lockdown, is that the next big explosion?
Yeah, I mean, the chapters happened with Morrowind and Somerset,
Of course.
and that was a steady increase, right? Nice, gentle,
like you're talking about with them coming on over the rolling launch.
Right, and we were successful, right? We had a lot of players, and it was good. But then COVID happened, and like every other live service game, our numbers just overnight blew up. Because what else are you going to do when you're stuck at home and you can't go out? You're going to jump into a virtual world. Right, and we had lots of server issues because this was at that point a 6-7-year-old game, and we weren't prepared for an influx like that. So Greymoor launched in June of 2020, which is like 6 weeks after we all went home.
Yeah,
and so that meant the content was in the can pretty much. We were in testing, for that
bug fixing.
But the live services aspect of Greymoor, when all these players came in, and we had, you can go back and look on the message boards and social media, right? It was a time when we had to put a lot of work into server stability and bringing more stuff online, and it was, again, a good problem to have, but it was happening against that backdrop of just, everything happening in the world.
I mean, and not to mention, I think it's so easy for even the way you're talking about it, to us as players to think about, we're on lockdown, we're at home, we just want to play this game. You're also developers who have now been forced home, and I imagine the entire pipeline is completely screwed up.
Well, fortunately, we're a live service game, and because we're a live service game, we have the concept of remote access to things, and so we had some of the technology, VPNs and everything already built out so that we could access stuff from home. So also, we already had a somewhat distributed development environment for ESO. So, you could work on one part of the game and another person could work on the same part of the game, and then you checked it in. And so
you really didn't have an excuse then.
I mean, I think we were 3 days off of our original launch date.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Wow.
So, right?
But it was the human interaction.
Of course.
You know, the decision making was slower. The being able to identify problems was slower. Identifying solutions was slower. That's where it really affected us.
It was really eye-opening because we always took it for granted. All of those water cooler talks, right? The random wandering around, you see something, you ask a question, like all of that went away because everybody was now at home, and you had to book a meeting in order to get somebody's attention because they're off in their own little world doing things. And so all of that collaborative stuff, we had to relearn how to do remotely. And you'd be shocked at how many game development problems get solved by just happenstance when you just walk by somebody's desk and see something, or you're in the cafeteria getting lunch and you talk about this problem and you're like, oh, we got a solution, and they solve it there before it becomes a problem. We had to learn, like I said, how to do all of that all over again. And it was tough.
Yeah, for sure. So then you get that pipeline down. Not that long after. It's almost, correct me if I'm wrong, a year later, you launched the Xbox Series X/S and the PlayStation 5 client, right?
I totally forgot about that. Yeah.
You've done a few things in this decade of this game being live.
Yeah, we did that in the middle of the pandemic, and that was, again, we have our own engine, so it's very scalable, and we spent some time and resources to make it support the modern shaders and DLSS and occlusion.
All the
new occlusion system.
Yes. Our graphics guys love that.
Yeah.
Love that.
As they should.
Yeah, and it's and it looks fantastic. Like, it basically brought our PC Ultra spec to console. And it runs great. And we could do performance modes. We could do 60 frames a second, or you could do fidelity mode at 4K. And so we
all know it's 60. That's not 60.
Yeah, everybody does. It's fine. It's fine. But fidelity mode is great if you're doing screenshots and stuff like that. But you can switch back and forth so easily that you can actually choose which one pretty much on the fly.
So then I want to start bringing you, I guess, back to community. We're talking about back in episode 2 when we talked about the console launch. One of the things that we celebrated there was 500,000 concurrents across all platforms. Did those numbers compare when we're talking to COVID?
We didn't get quite that much, but it was in the ballpark.
Okay.
And again, we had launched so much content between 2015 and 2020 that we couldn't support the concurrency that we did in 2020. So we did have queues in 2020 for the first time since 2015. And that was to preserve the stability of the people that were playing over people waiting. So,
and then I want to bring it to, as we move fully to the community conversation, nowadays. What are you seeing? I know we've talked on the show, Matt, about the different types of players, and the players who do check in once every 11 months. There's the big drop. I'm good. It's different this year. We're changing it all up. But like, where are we at in terms of what the Elder Scrolls Online audience looks like on a day-to-day basis? And I know that's really impossible to put a number on, nor would you probably want to. But like, however you want to answer that question.
Yeah, I think I'll go right back to the pandemic to start with,
Please.
Which is. The mood of the community kind of changed at that point where it went from being a great game and virtual world to a place where I can go where things make sense because the outside world doesn't, right? And we got a lot of feedback from our players that just like other games kind of like this, like Animal Crossing and where you can just go and live a virtual life that's not part of your normal day-to-day routine was very important to a lot of people. And we saw an explosion in housing videos because a lot of people are literally virtually nesting and making a place again that made sense, that they could outfit, that made them feel better about what was happening. And that was that's almost a responsibility at this point for us to do that, because we know it was so important to people maintaining their sanity for that time. So the mood kind of changed at that point from, to people that literally were doing housing more than a lot of other players were doing questing or PvP.
Sure.
And it was really cool, right? It's like they took the tools that we gave them and started. If you look at housing videos on YouTube for ESO, it's not houses, man. They make animated robots and balloons. It's just crazy. Somebody did a Japanese medieval village, in our housing system, and it's great stuff we would have thought of, and it's amazing, and we're really happy that we can support that, right? So coming out of the pandemic, that stayed, right? That concept of like it's a place now, not a game. And so a lot of people come into the game not understanding that, and then they see YouTube and everything, and it's a different vibe than you're expecting if you're used to Call of Duty or Diablo or
that is true, yeah.
Right. And so that's kind of where the community is now, which is like it grew in not just in size, but it grew in understanding of what the virtual world that they're in is.
And I was just gonna say,
Please.
the community now, you know, when they're talking like FPS, you know, high FPS and things like that, it's not like performance of the game, it's fashion per second now, right? Like that's their thing.
I love it. I love
That's
it.
their thing now, right? So that, as Matt said, like that conversation kind of changed from kind of power gaming traditional to that I can do whatever I want, be whatever I want, and look as cool as I want.
So then back to something we've talked about on this show. There's no right or wrong way to play this. The game,
Right.
the game. Do you feel like that's really where that message comes from and took off? Like before that, but when it was it just questing and it was guilds and it was traditional in quotes MMO?
No. Well,
At launch it was.
at launch it was, but once
Yeah.
we did one Tamriel it turned into you can play the game many different ways and all of them are fine. And I think the pandemic just added one more of those things to do, which is
Gotcha.
you don't even have to do combat. Just go in and do the housing system and and you don't have to do any of this stuff and just show off your house and invite friends over right. And it just added another activity that is now very important and central to the experience.
And I guess that's the big question I would ask you is like, why is community so necessary, essential to your game? Like obviously players equals money. Yeah, I mean, we know the financial, but I mean, it's that idea again that I've said on this show throughout all of these episodes of like, I could talk your ear off about the games that haven't made it, that didn't do the thing, that even had a community and still didn't make it. But somehow 10 years later, you are all still rolling and still pushing giant updates and making changes.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. And I think ultimately what it comes down to is the game draws the community. This is one of the things you like to say is it's their game. Or like we created it, it's our game initially, and then after launch it becomes their game, and
Sure.
we do essentially what they want us to do with some caveats in there. Otherwise, you get like Bodie McBoatface and stuff like that. But yeah, like you have to listen to them. You have to look at what they're doing, and we try really hard to be a part of that community. You know, we do a lot of different community events. You know, the Tavern is one of our favorites that we do, which is coming up in July.
And what's the tavern?
In
People
Germany.
don't know what that
Yeah.
is.
It's an event. We started in 2013,
13 or 14, yeah.
something like that. And it's just a community get together for, you know, anybody that's in the German area. So it's traditionally has been around Gamescom.
Sure.
We do it a month earlier now because we can get cooler venues and stuff like that in and around there. Last year we did it in a castle,
Oh, wow.
which was awesome.
And you get players from all over Europe.
All over Europe.
Mike, let's go.
Yeah, let's go.
You should absolutely go.
Yeah.
It's the best group of people, and it's they look forward to it because they get to see their virtual friends
For
in
sure.
person, right? Relationships are made.
We know
people
people.
gotten married.
Yeah.
like
We can make that happen.
Talk to me about that and blow it up from not just Germany, but like,
Yeah.
what do you remember the first story from the community that made you go, wow? And then like other crazy ones that have happened since then.
There's so many.
There's so many.
Yeah.
And they're all good. Some of them are pretty heartbreaking. Some of them are uplifting, right? It's like, you know, when we lose community members, it's always a big deal, and there's, you know, in-game remembrances and things, and
Yep.
that happens far too often, frankly. And we help wherever we can with those. But certainly, couples have met in the game, met in real life, gotten married, or now have kids, and bring them to the community events. And you know, and it's like it's hard not to just get emotional when you see that, because it's like that wouldn't have happened without what we did,
For sure.
right? And that's what the game is, right? It's not waving swords around and damaging monsters, right? It's about connecting with people virtually, and then, you know, in real life if you meet them, and that's the magic.
Yeah, one of my favorite stories is actually from the tavern. So one of our first taverns, we're in this little basement dungeon thing. There's about 100 people there, and we did a bunch of cool events and whatnot. but we met a few of the content creators and a few people in the community. And then the following year, more came. And there was this one, really nervous young lady who, brought me this. She said her English wasn't good, but it was fabulous.
Sure.
Right? It was perfect. And she wanted to show me a bug, right? Like about this particular item, show me this bug. And I was, okay, cool, thanks. We took it back to the team. We got it fixed. The next year, she came to the tavern again, but this time she had met somebody at the tavern previously.
Nice.
They were now a couple. Fast forward a few years, they missed last year's tavern because they were having a baby. Nice. And they were together. And when we went back for Gamescom, we ended up having dinner with them. They brought the kid out for us to meet and all that other stuff. So
that's incredible.
Like, yeah, they would have never have met if it wasn't for ESO. And that's just super, super cool.
What about developers on the team? I assume I mentioned it earlier, and from the direct a few months ago, the fact that one of them was talking about the starter area I'm working on, but I of course started like. How many of how old do you feel? Everyone out there is like, oh, I've been listening to you, Greg, since I was in junior high, and they work for me. And I'm like,
yeah.
Yeah. 17 years, 18 years
18
is
years.
a long time, right? A lot of, it's in that sense, like when we've been here for so long and have had a studio where so many people worked and some have left and gone off to do great things, right? And it's hard not to feel pride at, right? Almost parental, at the people that you mentored that were interns that then went into the team and now go off and start companies and make great games, right?
Sure.
We're recording this during GDC, right? So I'm seeing a lot of them now because we all get together, you run into them, in a hallway, and it's like it's a really, really, really good feeling.
Yeah, it's so much fun to watch people grow.
Yeah,
especially like Lauren was the one that you were talking about. Before she was on the team, she was a player. A player that was really enthusiastic and really passionate, and we ended up hiring her. We have a number of people on the team
who was also in the
Carrie
in the
came
video.
from that. Alec came from that, right? Where they were vocal people in the community that we were able to work with and hire, and they turned into these juggernauts, which is awesome, right? Watching people grow is just so cool.
Yeah, the best part of management is hiring people that are better than you, and we are definitely at that point. If you saw the direct, right, you'll see the result of that, right? They're amazingly good people that are very good at what they do.
Talk to me about how you listen to the community. Again, we've talked so much throughout this series about how great the community is, how you strive to drive out toxicity, and that's not what it's about. But then there's also been an underlying current from both of you of like, oh, well, the community requested this, or they wanted this, or 2 weeks after, all the bad YouTube videos people were making for no reason, we had this core group that's like, hey, we agree there's problems, but we're here for the right reasons. Where do you go to find them, or do they find you?
Everywhere.
Yeah.
So I spent a lot of time on Twitch, spent a lot of time on social media. One of my favorite things to do is to just lurk.
A poorly kept secret is Rich and I are both in guilds, in game, and we're with people who have no idea who we are.
Sure.
And I've been in guilds since day one that I'm an active member in, and they have no idea who I am. And Rich is the same. And we get a shockingly really good amount of information from just playing with people in the game, even if they're not talking, just seeing what they're doing. Like, I can complete this dungeon in 30 seconds if you do this exploit.
It won't be tomorrow.
We'll fix that.
Right. And that literally happened. And so it's fun, just to play your own game. And Rich and I probably played this game more than any other people because we have to play it before on the dev server, and then we play it on PTS when it's being tested, and then we play it on live when it's live on all the right. So it's a commitment, right? But when you're in it with the community and you're seeing it from their eyes, is when you can actually see the things that need to be done. And we're not perfect at it, obviously, right? But it really gives us the right perspective.
Yeah, and we get to experience the same pain. We get to see the same things. I during COVID got bored and started streaming ESO for a while. So I did that for a while, and that was cool. I got to see that side of things and understand what a lot of the streamers go through. So that was a new perspective for me, and I got to see that stuff. And we do community night trials with a number of folks where we used to call it tipsy trials, where we might get a little, we might drink a little bit.
Indulge.
Might indulge. That's the word I was looking for, and just have fun, right? We go and we do the thing, and it's a once a week commitment, but it's tons of fun, and people love it.
Have you been surprised by the community the PC side, the console side, the Xbox to PlayStation side? Like, is there
If I've learned one thing from this entire thing, it's that there are hardcore console players and there are very, very, very not hardcore PC players, right? That is not a thing, right?
Yep.
We have super hardcore console players, right? And a lot of our housing community is on PC. It's just what it is. And right at this point, the device you're playing on is just a door into
Sure.
your world, and it really doesn't matter how you get there. Once you're there, you do what you do.
Yeah, gamers are gamers.
Yeah.
It's funny you say about the door. Once you're there, you're there. It's just a device. You know, y'all put out a call for questions for this show.
Oh boy.
Did we?
You did.
I was not aware of that.
You opened the net.
It's
on
been
that
fun,
one.
guys.
You pulled the goalie, you opened the net on that one, and like every other question was crossplay.
Oh.
Yeah.
I know you. I know you gentlemen very well now.
Yeah.
I know that there's been a lot of whiteboards. I'd imagine this is something that's come up a lot, probably probably since console launch, if not right before it.
Yeah, we get that question a lot.
Why is it not possible?
Anything is possible.
We're working on doing some underlying tech changes that would make it possible.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like we know how important it is.
Of course.
Again, started working on this game in 2007. Didn't even think about 2 platforms, much less 6 or whatever we support now.
And everything's an Xbox if you didn't know.
Right.
So
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is
Yeah,
Xbox
I mean,
right
the
now.
2007
But
version
that
of
actually
us-
makes it easier now.
Yeah, that's a great point, actually.
That whole concept, right? The this is an Xbox thing, because that philosophy now comes from the top, and that makes it easier to get the agreements done to do what you need to do crossplay, which is an extremely long GDC presentation of technology, handshaking other
Wait,
technology.
you don't just flip the switch?
You don't just flip the switch, but
and it's
the
not
port?
just a technology problem either.
yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. It's-
Stakeholders, platform holders, yeah.
So it's something we know about. It's something we really want to do. We're working on the underlying tech for it, and we'll see if we can make it happen.
That's awesome. Yeah, I can only imagine building a 2007 game. You know what I mean? And not how do you ever future-proof think about this and stuff. So even having that answer is good enough. So there you go, everybody. You got asked. You don't have to ask it every time on every other question about it. But again, that's what we're talking about is your commitment to this community. And honestly, again, even as an outsider for the most part, right, who's watched your presentations or listened to podcasts or done these things, like the way you talk to them, I appreciate that you have answers. So many people will dodge things and and dodge is actually that's too negative of a word. You know what I mean? But find a way to cleverly get out of the question.
Yeah,
whereas
just not dodging. We really want to do crossplay. We really
just
want to do it.
really hard.
I swear, this is something that we understand is very important to players. We want to do it, and we're trying to figure out a way to do it, and we're working on that right now.
Okay, good. Thank you for that. And thank you for watching, everybody. Remember, of course, this is the Elder Scrolls Online podcast, a 4-episode limited series from us at the Kind of Funny Gamescast. If you like it, why don't you subscribe, share, follow, tell your friends, do whatever it is for the platform of choice that you're on, whether it's over on the Elder Scrolls Online's channels or if it's over on the Kind of Funny channels, no matter where you're getting the show. Thank you for your support. And for now, here's a word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by the Elder Scrolls Online. Every legend starts somewhere, and in ESO, it starts with you. Join the millions of players in the award-winning online fantasy RPG. Write your story into a vibrant chapter of Tamriel's distant past and discover a world steeped in adventure and possibility. ESO is more than a game, it's a virtual world where you belong. This year, ESO is breaking the mold and introducing the Content Pass, complete with 2 new dungeon packs, 2-part story content, a brand new zone to explore, and a world-changing in-game event, all released throughout the year. And talking about story, 2025 brings us the Seasons of the Worm Cult, a direct sequel to ESO's main story. Travel to the never-before-explored island of Solstice, where worm cult activity is surging. It's up to you to unite the 3 alliances against this old foe that has mysteriously returned. Pick up the Elder Scrolls Online now on PlayStation, Xbox, and PC. Michael?
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about the community because we've talked a lot about PvP, but we haven't really dove into it. And that is something that brought me on. I can remember watching Twitch streams of the giant scale battles of 3 different factions colliding in the middle. And I thought that is some of the coolest stuff around. What is PvP like now in 2025 and beyond? What are some of the steps that you've taken to really make sure it is kind of future proofing, constantly evolving and getting better?
Well, we just went through a series of pretty crazy tests on live. towards the end of March.
And we're recording this before the test happens, so literally they're experimental tests. So we don't know how they'll turn out, but we're confident that information will come from them that we can use.
The whole goal of doing this test is to prove out some of the performance problems that we've had in Cyrodiil in the larger scale battles. And it's focused really on the abilities, the combat, how much we can jam through kind of that pipe. You think of a fire hose.
Yeah.
It's only so big, we get so much water through there. That's basically what we're testing right now and on the ability side of things. If that goes well, we have a direction. If it doesn't go well, then we're going to go and have a think about what we do next in Cyrodiil. But outside of Cyrodiil, we've got Battlegrounds. Those came in Morrowind in 2017. We've got Imperial City, which is this hybrid PvE, PvP thing, which is tons and tons and tons of fun. And the storyline is phenomenal in there. The Drake of Blades is awesome. That whole storyline is really cool. So and then dueling, right? So those are kind of the avenues for our PvPers to get their thing on.
Yeah, going back to the beginning of the project, obviously the original mandate for the product was Dark Age of Camelot's PvP, WoW's PvE, Elder Scrolls IP, right? We've gotten away from many of those for business reasons, right? That we talked about in episode 1. But the PvP thing is still there. It's just that it happened that our user base, the massive numbers of users came in and were not interested in PvP. Mm-hmm. However, a very important part of the community is massively interested in PvP. And by giving the PvE questing people abilities, all of the armor sets, doing the champion system, right, doing the PV gear chase, that adds items literally to the game, and each one needs to be a little unique and special, and each one requires some CPU when the player does it in the game. And when you add that to a PvP system where 900 players are in game at one time, it stopped being able to work, basically.
Oh, wow.
So instead of taking away instead of taking away a lot of the abilities and that sort of thing, we actually just scaled down the number of people that were allowed in a Cyrodiil campaign at once. And the point of these tests is to redo the ability system just in Cyrodiil, just in the PvP part of the game, and get back up to the 900 that we had, which was 300, 300, 300. So it's a 3-sided PvP game. So it's a natural evolution of the game, and I know our PvP players that really want to go back to that have been very frustrated with us, but there are 4 or 5 other groups of players that also want content that are massively frustrated at us for not giving them stuff faster. So we did do Battlegrounds. We did things that we do were smaller sided PvP to try to alleviate some of that in the interim. But now it's time to go back and actually look at the PvP system and make it performant. And it's going to come, if this test works, it'll be you have a separate set of abilities in PvP than you do in PvE. They're named the same they are in PvE. It's not that. It's just they just act a little differently in PvP to be much more performant.
Gotcha.
Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
No, thank you for opening up the door. And I love you. Like, we're testing it. We're trying.
Yep.
The question I would be out of that one is, how maddening is it to have a game that has all these different types of players? We're talking about PvE. We're talking about PvP. We're talking about people who are just designing homes. And you just said, we hear the PvP people yelling at us, but we also have these 5 other groups yelling at us. Like, first off, what when you look at it, what are the groups? And then how do you keep them all happy without losing them?
You have to do what you think is right at the time.
Right.
It's a constant weighing, resources versus pandemic versus servers melting because too many people are right. All these take resources to deal with, and so which is why we haven't been able to do PvP for a long time, because the servers melting as part of the pandemic would have directly affected the number of people in Cyrodiil, because it was a CPU too many people on the servers problem. So there's always reasons, and I know they sound like excuses to the players, and frankly, I understand that, because I love the PvP system too, and I would really love to go in like it was on launch day. It was just swarms of players, everywhere, which is awesome.
It was wild. It was cool.
Do you remember this? You had these moments?
I remember this very well. Yes.
There's nothing like that, that feeling of just massive numbers of players, Braveheart style, running into battle, and it's awesome. It's literally my favorite part of the game, and so this experiment that we're doing is kind of this new, when we're talking about seasons and changing things, this is something we could not have done in the chapter model because we were forced to launch something every June 1st, and we just didn't have the resources to do things like this that took, obviously, engineers away, designers away. So now that we're stretching the model out, so we're not launching content quite so big content quite so often, and definitely not on the same calendar day every year, it gives us the chance to pry out these 6-8 week tests at the time to develop them, 3 months, whatever it takes, that we can do these experiments, right? And now if this works, right, we have the basis for our system that then we can flesh out into a real new Cyrodiil that has its own kind of gear or ability chase that's much more performant.
Yeah, and the other part to that as well is there's just some problems that are much harder to diagnose than others. And with Cyrodiil in general, all of that happens because of load. And so trying to reproduce that amount of load on a full server internally for us is super hard. Like, we use bots and things like that, but a bot can't replicate what a player does. And so, like, trying to track that stuff down, and we've done a ton of these types of tests over the years. Like, Ed Tafoe and Brian Wheeler, Brian Wheeler is our lead combat and PvP designer, and Ed Tafoe is CT.
He's the
tech director now.
Studio tech director.
Who did a lot of the server stuff. They worked hand in hand for like 3 years, working on the servers, trying to get the performance better. And it helped significantly, but it still didn't bring us over that threshold where players stopped feeling that input lag, that lag. So then we started doing tests like, well, let's turn the champion system off in Cyrodiil. Let's turn proc sets off in Cyrodiil. Let's turn group healing, on. So
no NPCs. No wandering.
NPCs, right? Like,
Drop a bomb on it.
We went through a ton of different things. And so this Cyrodiil test that we're doing, or have done by the time this goes live, is that next evolution in there to kind of go through and incrementally test where the problem is. And it's maddening to us because we can't fix it. We can't, right? Like, it's really, really hard to do. So that's, again, that probably sounds like an excuse.
Well, to illustrate, and this is a very live service game design story, like, so there, every gamer knows FPS, frames per second,
of course.
Or fashion per second.
So that 98% of the time, that's your client, and that's how many frames it's displaying on your screen, per second. There's also server frames per second, which is how many cycles a server can perform every frame. And so the problem with our PvP system is, it just like on a client, our server gets bogged down when too much stuff goes through it, and the FPS goes way down. So we actually over time, when our players were thinking we weren't doing anything about PvP, we actually got our server frames for Cyrodiil from like 700 down to 300,
right?
Which is like half,
Yeah,
which is a miracle that we did that. But the problem is, anything over like 70 was unacceptable to the players, right? And so we cut it down by literally we doubled the number of frames, and yet it wasn't enough for the players to notice. And that's why we're now doing this. When we realized that, hey, we had done everything, we actually made it so much better on the server, yet it's still not discernible to the players, then now we know we need to.
Yeah, and for the vast majority of the time, like, the server frames are really, really good. They're below that threshold, but prime time, right, full pop campaigns, then there's these hiccups occasionally in there. That's what we're trying to solve.
Yeah.
Video games are hard to make,
Yeah.
I feel like, in general,
Yeah, they
let
are.
alone this, that you're always on the treadmill.
Yep.
Something's always happening.
Yeah. But it keeps
But it's
you young.
fun.
Yeah.
Right? Every day's different.
I feel like that's got to be something that, again, we talked to for our very first episode. The first thing we talked about was the unspoken synergies, right, between Elder Scrolls Online is 10, Kind of Funny is 10, this, that, blah, blah, blah. The other one I think that I've talked to so many developers about is that it took me a long time, but there was a developer friend of mine who released a game that was very well received, but she was having a terrible time at lunch because she was reading the comments from the people who didn't like it. And I had this moment of clarity talking to her. I'm like, oh man, like, you in my world would get to publish a YouTube video once every 6 years and then look at those comments and do it. Whereas for us and Kind of Funny, there is this joy and pain and everything else of, we do this every day, and when you don't like it or don't connect with it, we see that comment and we want to iterate on it immediately. And it might not be something we can immediately change, but if it comes to the next big, Patreon push or anniversary or whatever, you see us constantly revising what we're doing to get there. And I feel like your type of game development is so much more like that, where you have this line of the community that's there and you see them every day and you see the peaks and you see the valleys and you see the feedback. That's got to be, again, powerful, but again.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
It's that same boat, right? You know, you put your blood, sweat, and tears into something and you release it, and then some people love it and some people hate it and some people really hate it. And right, you just, you got to deal with it. And people generally don't complain unless they're really passionate.
Great point.
And I think I said that earlier. And so you gotta dig into that and see what they're really upset about.
Yeah, in something that I am sure you will agree with, because you get it every day too. You definitely, after a certain point, we've all been here long enough to with that internet thing, is that you can look at a comment and pretty easily tell if it's in good faith.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And even if it's full of things you don't want to hear, if it's in good faith, there's something there that you should probably take account. And then there are some that's just whatever. Like, life goes on.
So again, talking about this, what I think is interesting and very similar to us is you're saying, there's people who really hate a thing. I assume that, like us, when that happens, they're giving you the good faith to fix it, though, or to listen to them. Or
generally.
Yeah. Obviously, there's always going to be atrophy, people leaving, coming and going. But like the majority of this audience, I feel like, would probably be there with you through all of it.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's all about trust.
Yeah,
and so we have to show up, with the changes. And so as long as we keep doing that, I think we'll be on the right trajectory.
I've heard you both talk about it, and Elder Scrolls Online in general talk about it, but like how the ESO community is the best one in gaming, and how toxicity has been cut, not out because that's impossible, but
right.
to such a low level. I want to know from both of you why. Why do you think that's the case, Matt?
Well, we've talked about this a lot. We all have our own theories. First of all, and I say this all the time, and I know it sounds like a shtick, but we are a virtual world as much as we are a game. So
Sure.
we attract people that aren't necessarily in it to dominate. And whenever you're in a game that's about domination or winning or competing, right, you get a totally different type of person.
They sure do, Mike.
Yeah.
You want to tell me stories of playing Fall Guys and just stopping to throw people off?
But I think there's something, and I know Rich will probably have a completely different answer, but there's something about a game that came out of the gate not sprinting, that had a group of people that believed in it, that then actually started sprinting, and those people are there and they're your evangelists, and they're like, these developers, this company, whatever, right? And stick with them because they're going to do the right thing. And I think there's something to that there. Like the lack of immediate giant success meant that we had to fight for it. And our community, we did have a lot of very supportive community, even back when we were a meme, right? And there were people that were fighting back against that. And those are the people, I think, that are the core of the community, that when you log into the game as a new player and they're playing and they ask a question, like, it's in their best interest to get a new player in and teach them how awesome the game is, because they want the game to succeed. And so I think the pay it forward part of that has been a big, big, big part of our success.
Something we haven't talked about that's an interesting callback to you, Matt, of course, is that you wanted to do an MMO for Fallout. Then that, of course, didn't happen. You came over here, this happens. But then Fallout 76 does happen. And Fallout 76 has such a similar story of stumbling out of the gate, but having an audience and finding it to where, of course, they have this giant explosion with the Fallout TV show, let alone, I'm sure, COVID numbers going up. Did you reach out to them at their launch? Did you? How's that relationship work?
Yeah, first of all, I love that game.
Oh, yeah.
I actually grew up in West Virginia, so
Oh, nice.
Like I'm literally, I know the map, and yeah. So I wasn't part of the team by any means, but there were ideas being bounced off, especially after launch, which is like, how do you respond to feedback, that kind of thing. But they're good at what they do, right?
Yeah.
It was like anything that I added would have just cemented something that they were already thinking about. So,
Sure.
It's not like I had a magic bullet or anything. It's like, listen to the community and look at what people are playing that actually play all the time, and add more of what they're doing and less of what they're not. And it's just, basic stuff, but they were already on that path.
Yeah, I got to have a few really good sit downs with them when they were talking about doing their their version of One Tamriel,
Yeah.
the one followed, or whatever they ended up naming that. Just to kind of give them some, here's the issues we ran into, some knowledge sharing and stuff like that. But as Matt said, like, they know their game, they know what they're doing. We were just there to kind of help when they needed questions answered.
Speaking of knowing your game, knowing what you're doing, and of course your community. Again, the direct happens. You come out, you talk about this, and again, your messaging is so great. And even the ad read in this episode I like so much, right? Because it's about you. You keep putting it on the player, right? Of like, this is your world to go do it in. Before we end this podcast, this amazing series, and before Mike and I stream the game today, of course,
very excited.
Twitch.tv/kindoffunnygames, YouTube.com/kindoffunnygames. It'll be up there forever. And I'm sure we'll be playing more of it. My question really becomes then, let's talk about, now that we have all this information, what we're about to set off on, what we have set off on, and then even beyond that, where we're going with it. So I guess recapping what's going on right now.
Yeah, I'll do the
bullet point high
top
level.
down, the high level, and then it's of course Rich who's actually
He'll do the work.
implementing all of it. But I think the theme of this, like, people are focusing on seasons and what that means in other games, and having either a positive or a negative opinion based on that. It's important that what we're actually doing now is changing the model so we have more time to do things that we need to do that we've been putting off for a long time, right? And chapters were awesome, but the community was starting to send us very clear messages that doing the same thing every year was a little too cyclical. And even though the content was fun, right, hey, maybe you should fix these things. And we literally didn't have the time to fix those things, whatever they were pointing out. So we could go back to doing one large thing a year, right? That would fit into what we're doing eventually. But what we're doing right now is kind of unplugging the chapter so that we can free up the teams to do things that we've wanted to do for a long time. Like continue guild storylines, like fix problems in Rivenspire. I don't want to. Rich is going to punch me now because we've redone that zone. But fix Cyrodiil, right? Like all these things have been stacking up, and we haven't had the time to do them. This model gives us the time to do those things while delivering great content. It's going to be delivered either a little less often, or it's going to be targeted at a specific zone to fix something or to add something. And but we're still going to tell great stories, but now we get to react a little more to problems that need to be solved.
I think that's the key.
Yeah.
It lets us be a little bit more flexible in how quickly we can react to things and do more unexpected things, right? Like that's definitely a big piece of feedback is, the stuff is good, but it's starting to feel formulaic. So we want to break that mold and do something different.
And why aren't you doing crossplay, right? This gives us the chance to actually delve into the very difficult technical problems that need to be solved. We can never do that with the chapter model.
No, I think you've made the case for it in this episode before we even got to this part of it. I'm like, okay, cool. Well, here's where we're going to go focus on PvP because that community needs it. We're looking into crossplay. What are the other, and nobody's holding you to it, but you communicate so well. What are the other pain points you see with ESO right now that you'd love to touch on and hopefully get the time bandwidth, whatever?
We call it modernizing.
Okay.
Like in many ways, we've modernized every year. We have a current gen console client. We have we are always adding new graphical stuff, right? But there are still things like we've heard since 2014 that combat feels very MMO and not very first person Elder Scrolls.
Interesting, yeah.
Right, and to make it a little
floaty,
more it a little more visceral. And we've never had the time to do that. Like our animations are a little 2014. Our zones are the older ones are a little 2014. Our UI, our PC UI especially, right? It's not fantastic, and it needs to be updated. We've already announced that we're going to redo that, right? We have a list of these things that I just picked the top 5 or 6 there, right? That's what we're looking at.
There's the new and returning player experience, right? We've been so focused on putting new stuff in and adding new stuff for the veterans, we kind of lost sight of what's that like for a new player when they come in. Like, holy cow, there's 10 years of stuff. Where do I start?
Yeah.
What's the right order, right? We get that question all the time, and P.S. there is no right order, but
Go build your house. Your houses are big.
Yeah. Well, you just said this at the before we started filming, which was, hey, I'm jumping back in after a while, and holy shit, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
the
there's a
thing.
lot.
It's like it's overwhelming because the game is so large that especially a returning player that has an idea of what the game was like in 2018 or whenever the last time they played it's a lot different now, and we don't do a good job of reintroducing a player back into the world. And my reaction when you said that was, you should just roll a new character. You did,
yeah.
right.
But I'm committed, and I like this.
And that's the right answer, right? And I had the wrong answer there because I wanted you to see the new tutorial and everything, but you don't want that. You want to play the character that you played before.
I'm committed to Diana.
We as developers need to make that experience better.
100%.
Yeah. Michael, we're winding down.
It's very special. This was a lot of fun, these 4 episodes. You know, MMOs growing up as a kid, that was my bread and butter. I loved MMOs. I loved this shared world, this experience I got to experience with my friends. And ESO was a really special one for me. So getting to go behind the scenes with you two was a moment I'll never forget. And I'm sure the audience will share the same of this was a lot of fun to get to learn, see the future, and just talk, which has been great. Thanks, you two.
This has been a blast for us. Matt and I could literally talk about ESO for days.
That's what you do.
Yeah, that's what we do, right?
Yeah, but rarely in this depth. Like this, it's great to kind of stretch it out and actually explain. Like a lot of times we're announcing things, and players are like, "Why are you doing that? You just announced something, right?" This gives us the chance to actually explain why we're doing it, right? And even though I know we've left a lot of questions unanswered with some of the things we've said, right? We're trying to get across in this format, which is great, which is we get a chance to explain things a little more, not just announce them.
I guess my big question for both of you, and this is, way back to journalism school at Mizzou, is what didn't we ask you? We got to talk this entire time. We've done these 4 episodes. It's 4 hours of content we've done on ESO, but I feel like there's always something that is in the back of your head of, I wish we would have gotten to that. I wish we would have done that. Is there something, Matt, that stands out to you, Rich, that stands out to you? And I want it from both of you, of whatever it would be. But it's that thing that when we set off to do this show, it's that idea of I want the kind of funny audience to find game development information here, and I want the ESO audience to find ESO information here, and I don't want to alienate one or the other. So I don't know if I skewed away from a topic you wanted to get into.
No, I didn't have an agenda coming in, but I think the question, and we might have answered it unsuccinctly over the last 4 hours or whatever, is why should you play this game?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question.
Right.
I thought of that.
That's a good one.
Why should you? Hey, cut it out, put it back in. Guys, Matt specifically, why should you play this game? Why should you play ESO right now?
Yeah, the answer is if you get listened to this far into the podcast, right, you get a pretty good idea. But it's a game that has a community that will welcome you, that doesn't enforce a play style on you, that gives you a virtual world to explore based on one of the best known IPs in the world. Yeah. And you can kind of carve your own path in that. Is it perfect? No, but it's a great game and a great world with a great community.
Nailed it.
Yeah, I can't do better than that.
Do you have a different question that you wish I would ask you?
I mean,
you want to talk more about your wife?
For me, I think I already do that enough. Yeah. I think I do that enough. No, I mean, I think that the thing, actually, maybe I will, because she imparted this bit of wisdom to me when I first took on the creative director role, because I was really worried, right? Like, if I make a mistake, I make the wrong call, people lose their jobs, right? That was always kind of in the back of my head. And she's just like, you got to do what you think is right and think about our family, just our family dynamic as it is. She's like, when I'm planning meals, we have technically we have 5 people at home. She can't make a meal that satisfies all 5 people. How are you going to make a decision that satisfies millions of people, like all of them at the same time? So don't worry about it. Do what you think is right. And that really hit hard for me. And it's something that I think about all the time whenever I do stuff is, we're going to make the wrong call sometimes, but there's going to be people that are going to support it. They're going to love it. And they're going to keep playing. Right. And those that are upset, we will try to not hit them. We will try to satisfy them, at some point over the course of the year.
That's a fantastic question and answer. Michael, what didn't you get the chance to ask? What do you got it?
It's just been so much fun to celebrate, and these moments where you have those big announcements, we get to see the wowing trailers, and as fans, it is always cool of, wow, oh my gosh, I'm blown away. The hard work that goes behind it and the decision making of what those are, those characters that may or may not return. What is the excitement level for the team when it is, hey, this is the moment we're going to share this big thing? Who makes those decisions? What kind of fun do you have?
Yeah, I mean, Rich does too, but with a game like this, with a team this big, with a game that's been around, right, the whole team needs a very clear direction of where they're going, and so that's what we try to do. Both of us are now at the point where we're not and we can't get involved so much in the day-to-day decision making because there's so much of it. But we really try to keep the team pointed at the place we're trying to get to.
Yep. And the team loves making new stuff, but they also love going back and bringing back those beloved characters, right? You know, the Razumdars of the game and so on and so forth. So they are really excited about what's coming this year and the stories that we're telling and the big event that we're doing with the wall and whatnot. So yeah, like the team's really, really excited about this.
They should be. Congratulations. You know, I think again, like, you guys have built something so special, but again, even to go watch that direct or hear you talk about it for 4 hours and the passion and the love and the care and the, you know, this is 10 years of the game, sure, like we said, but since 2007, right? Like, it's such a healthy chunk of your lives, your professional careers, and the fact that you've been given this opportunity to grow it and you have, and you've changed it. Like, I hope you both are incredibly proud of what you've made, and everybody obviously back home working on it and their homes working on it. You know what I mean?
Right.
How separated the company is.
Yeah, it's a great team. You know, it's really a great team that allows us to do this, and so can't speak highly enough of them. Like, we try to set the direction, but you know, there's a lot of people. It takes a village to do a game like this, and we have a good village.
Yeah, and it really isn't. It's going to sound cliche, but it is really an honor to be able to represent the team.
Sure.
Right, like obviously Matt and I don't do all the work. There's a lot of really smart people that are really, really passionate about the game, and we get to talk about this thing that, you know, they have put their lives into. So it's a big honor.
Okay, so 2 things before we get out of here. Back to you. I need to have you tell me, what is everybody excited for? It is Friday, May 23rd right now. What is going on? What is coming? What is the big push this year?
This is a new way for us to tell stories in ESO, right? This year is focused on the Worm Cult. You know, this is a continuation of the base game story. There's a brand new way for you to build your characters with our subclassing. So now you can, like I said earlier, you can be a necromancer / warden / arcanist if you want, right? Like you have all of these abilities. I think it's over 3,000 combinations of class abilities that you get added to your repertoire if you want. We've got Solstice, which is a brand new island with some very cool stories focused mainly around the Argonians and the High Elves. Sounds weird, but it makes a lot of sense. When you get in there, you start to dig into there. You start to learn more about, you know, this outcast group that's there and kind of doing their thing. And then, of course, we've got the big Soul Wall event, which is the first time we've ever done this. That's based on servers. So each server will progress their own way. And then we cap that all off with all kinds of cool quality life improvements and whatnot, which we didn't really talk too much about.
Well, that comes under modernization, right?
Right, comes under modernization. But I think one of the things that I will say is our housing community has been really, really patient with us in terms of like all the cool things we've built. But one of the pain points for them is just inventory pressure. You know, they have all these furnishings, all this crazy stuff that they have to kind of manage. A lot of people have storage homes where they store,
just toss it all in.
Yeah, they just, right. And
it's like the warehouse in Indiana Jones.
100%.
Like
right?
literally, you walk in and you see just rows of
multiple houses that have this, right? And so we implemented a furnishing vault, or are implementing a furnishing vault, where they're going to be able to store some number of these in the vault and clear up a whole crap ton of inventory space. So just lots of things like that.
This is a question for you.
Lay it on me.
And then it's going to be a question. I was thinking, obviously, we're talking so much about returning players, all these different changes, modernization, blah, 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 blah. But like, we're going to stream it right now, basically, right? Are we rolling new characters?
I really would love you to see the new opening area and the tutorial and how they've redone this, because I remember day one of what it really looked like, and recently I have re-rolled a character, and I think it's a great job.
No big deal on my character.
But Greg, I would love for you to be the most comfortable, so we're going to stick with our normal characters, and we'll find our way, and we'll look north, and we're just going to go straight through the map.
We could, because like I was thinking we have new people watching, obviously. Hopefully they're excited, they want to go play it. My question to you guys is, what is your advice for a new player on how to start, how to play ESO?
It's a good one.
Yeah, I mean, that answer would be colored by the way that we play the game. But I would.
Which we play very differently.
We play very differently.
Like PvP. All right, it's based on this Camelot game. It's
but when I play, yes, I do PvP a fair amount, but I very much like the exploration also. So what I would do is go through the original tutorial, create a new character, and then go to Orsinium, which is my favorite place in the game. Which again, it was the one zone that we had 2 years to make, and it just feels right. And it has some of the best quests in the game that aren't even the main story in that zone is great, but some of the side quests are unbelievable. But that's what I would do.
My advice, and this is me as a power gamer, but what I would do is just take your time and go slow. And I think the biggest thing that players need to understand is you're never behind, so you can always play with whomever, so you can just come in and play whenever.
Love that.
But the biggest one is there is nothing you can do to your character that you can't undo later on easily.
Yep.
So just experiment and make choices and try something. If you want to pick up a destruction staff and shoot fireballs, go do that, right? If you want to sword and board it, you can do that. Like just experiment and see what sticks with you, because you can always undo it later on.
If you want to pickpocket guards, you can do that.
You can do that.
There's a whole thriving criminal enterprise system that literally exists on you stealing stuff and fencing it, right? There's so many things in the game that you can do that are amazing, and you don't know until you go and try it.
Yep. Just go slow, explore, learn the world, learn the lore, and try stuff.
I'm going to work on my house. I'm very excited about it this whole time. I'm very excited.
Yeah.
P.S. The guards don't like it when you pickpocket.
Yeah.
So you better be good at pickpocketing.
Get yourself up. Get out of there.
Be careful.
Yeah. Matt and Rich, thank you so much for letting us be part of your story for the past 4 episodes of this to celebrate your 10-year anniversary. It's been incredible.
Yeah, thanks for having us. This is a big thrill to be able to go in this depth with this.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Really enjoyed it.
Good. I'm glad you had fun. Yeah. And Mike, thank you for hanging out with me.
Thanks, Greg. Thank you to everybody. An experience of a lifetime. Another one we get to share together, and one I'll never forget. Thanks, homie.
Remember, everybody, this has been the Elder Scrolls Online podcast, a kind of funny Gamescast special. There's been 4 episodes, so if you're just tuning into this one, go ahead and get back to it, whether it be over on the ESO YouTube, whether it's over on the Kind of Funny YouTube or our podcast service, Gamescast, you could find it there. Of course, we are going to be streaming this one, and I want to do a long one, all right?
Okay,
we're doing a long stream today. None of this 3-hour business. We're going longer than that. You can catch it live on twitch.tv/kindoffunnygames, youtube.com/kindoffunnygames. Obviously, later you get it on YouTube whenever you want to. But for now, we will bid you adieu and remind you that you can go play the Elder Scrolls right now on Xbox, PlayStation, and PC. Go ahead and do it. Give them some feedback. And remember, until next time, it's been our pleasure to serve you.